Have you ever felt that gentle nudge telling you there's something more? That the path you carefully planned might not be the one that you're meant to take? I'm Marisa Switzer, and this is If I Hadn't Said Yes, Stories of Surrender and the Pursuit of Purpose. Each week, I sit down with women who have trusted their journey, stepped into the unknown, and discovered their true calling along the way. Whether you're feeling called to make a change or simply seeking inspiration from others who have taken the leap, this is your invitation to explore what might be possible if you say yes. Hi guys, and welcome to episode 2 of If I Hadn't Said Yes. If you listened last week, you know that we really dove into the big pivotal moment in my life where I decided to completely surrender the path that I had for myself for a greater plan. And I think it's important to mention that throughout that journey, there were moments where I had to make very difficult decisions to pivot my plans, to go against everything that I had thought that I had for my life and trust that there was something better for me. And so a lot of times in our business, in our career, in the way that we approach things in life, there comes a moment where we have to pivot in order to step into the thing that we are called to do. And so today I want to talk about what those pivots look like personally in my career, stepping into entrepreneurship, in hopes that that just inspires you to approach those moments with expectancy and hopefulness for what is next. Before we dive in, I want to touch on something that was said this morning in church. And on this podcast, you will hear me talk about my faith and how much that has impacted my journey so far. And I just want to let you know that whatever background you come from, whoever you love, whatever you believe in, everyone is welcome here. These are just my personal stories of what I feel like my faith has done in my life. So I wanted to share this because I feel like this really is my biggest motivator in sharing these stories, and the way that this was said just aligns so well with that. So God has designed us to be problem solvers, and the problem that gets to you the most, or the problem that just hits you the hardest, is probably the one that God is calling you to fix. I absolutely love that sentiment. One of my mentors and one of my favorite authors, Jess Connolly, also says it as, who are you broken for? Or what are you broken about? Usually the things that really move us the most or bother us the most, or where we see the most room for improvement, are the things that we are called to step out and step into and make better and make an impact. So I just wanted to share that because I really love the way that he put that. So last week we talked about my big yes, the big yes that changed the entire course of my life. But in order to get to that yes, there was definitely a series of pivots that I had to make in my life that felt scary in the moment, but ended up paying off in my purpose. And so I want to tell you about those. We talked about my journey to entrepreneurship and what that looked like and how I had always wanted to work in fashion. But my journey from realizing that I wanted to work in this industry at 12 years old to what it looks like now at almost 31 years old has a lot of lessons that I feel like you could learn from. So let's talk about where it all started. When I was 12 years old, I distinctly remember having Teen Vogue pages just taped covering my walls. And in that moment, I think it was really admiring the creativity of the fashion industry, of the creatives in the industry, combined with growing up in the era of The Hills and the Rachel Zoe Project and Kel on Earth, and just seeing these incredible women who were so passionate about what they do, so creative, and able to just really carve out their own paths. To me as a 12-year-old, that was really inspiring, and I was pretty set on this is what I want to do in my life. I also have to mention that my grandmother has always, my entire life, and before I was even born, sewn her own clothing. She has an insane sewing room in her house, and growing up, we did a lot of sewing together. And so I definitely think that had a little bit of influence too on just the creativity that I knew was available within this career path. And so at 12 years old, I jumped in headfirst. I joined my mall's teen board, where we would produce fashion shows and set up marketing campaigns and events for the stores that were within the mall. And that was really my first taste of working in the industry, and I loved it. And so I was very grateful that my great grandmother really believed in my dream and sent me to LIM Summer Fashion School, which is a fashion college in New York City where I was able to take fashion courses as a high school student. Again, we focused on producing shows, securing sponsorships, marketing campaigns, and running around New York City at 15 years old, which now as a mom, God bless my parents, because I just don't understand how they let me do that. I'm very grateful that I had those opportunities. I would go on these great adventures over the summer, and then I would return to high school like it was nothing. And so I was really bursting at the seams to get out and just experience this dream and go to New York and do the work that I wanted to do. And so my last year of high school, I was interning for a local fashion boutique and was very lucky that the owner would take me into New York, and we would do buying appointments and meet the designers and tour showrooms, and just had some incredible experiences. Like I met Nicole Miller when I was like 16 years old, and that was the coolest thing ever in that moment. And so as soon as I was able to graduate and be closer to New York, I took the opportunity. From my freshman year of college to my junior year of college, was constantly in New York City as much as I could, would hop on the train from school in Jersey and go work in New York. And I was in college during a time when you basically had to beg people to work for free for them. I know interning has changed a lot since then, but any semester I could, I was just interning and getting more and more experience. And I feel very lucky that from the age of 18 to probably 21, I really got to work in every single part of the industry that I could have dreamed of, from New York Fashion Week production to styling to showrooms, events, just so much experience in different areas of the industry so that I could really see what I loved and wanted to do. And by the time I was a junior in college, I was accepted to the job a million girls would kill for, as the Devil Wears Prada would say, working at one of the two larger fashion publications in New York. And again, at that time, I had really had every experience I could have dreamed of. And I want to make a side note on that. I remember I was probably a junior in college. I was always sharing my experiences, sharing how excited I was to get to do the things that I really love to do. And I'll never forget that my part-time job manager at the time made a comment to me like, everything you do, you always say is the best thing you've ever done or the most exciting thing you've ever done. Like it can't be that good, or everything can't be that exciting, or something like that. And I just remember thinking, in that moment, I could have felt so discouraged from sharing my experiences and from sharing that I got to do the things that I loved to do and was excited to do. But I had the emotional capacity to know that that was probably coming from a place of them not being very happy in their own career. And I just wanted to point that out because I think a lot of times when we step outside of the boundaries of what a lot of people know to be normal or the path that everyone should take, there's going to be people who don't understand, and there's going to be people who have something to say. And unfortunately, if you listen to all the people that had something to say about you pursuing what you're feeling called to do, it could stop you. And so I just want to encourage you that when you feel like you have a specific call in your life, don't let the opinions of others or the fact that other people can't understand it to stop you from doing it. So I find myself working in the PR office for a huge fashion magazine publication. I just remember sitting there feeling like I should be so grateful and so excited in this moment, but I feel completely unfulfilled. And I think it was a combination of getting to experience every part of the industry, finally being here, and feeling like it should have been this climactic moment. And it wasn't. I was feeling unfulfilled. I was feeling like I wasn't helping anyone. I wasn't serving anyone. I was just a cog in the machine. And one day I'll share all of the Devil Wears Prada industry stories that I experienced while working in that office. I won't share those today, but in that moment, I had to make a decision. If I was going to explore doing something other than the thing that I had dreamed of for my entire life up to that point, other than the thing that I had spent so much of my life wanting to do, or so much of my life growing this resume to do. And there is a fallacy in psychology where if you have put a lot of time into something, it can be difficult to change paths, to change direction, or to walk away from it altogether because it feels like you have put so much time into it. It is called the sunken time fallacy. So how much time have you put into this, and why would you all of a sudden change your mind and want to walk away when you've put all your time into this? And this is a mindset block that I feel like a lot of us experience. I know I did in that moment. It was scary to think that something I had worked so hard for was just not fulfilling the way that I thought it would. And so in that moment, I had to choose to allow myself to consider pivoting. And I didn't know what that would look like in the moment. So I just had to take it one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. I really started to embark on this journey of figuring out what my purpose and my calling was in life. I was reading The Purpose-Driven Life and like any book I could on figuring out what I was meant to do now that it was all up in the air, up for questioning. And I also want to share that during this time, I was a communication major in college, thinking that I was going to work in marketing, PR, and fashion, right? Well, I had taken an intro to cultural anthropology class where I learned so much about the world, about other cultures, about society as a whole, and how we approach so many things that I think that started to play into feeling unfulfilled in what I was doing. By no coincidence, my cultural anthropology professor focused his research on the fashion industry around the world. And so I learned things about Antwerp, Belgium, where 6 designers just created this movement that really sparked the economy. I learned about Buenos Aires, where these makers were creating Fashion Week and trying to build up an economy similar to the European fashion market. I just learned about fashion's impact in underserved areas in India and how dyes from our jeans were impacting their water supply, like things that you don't think about when you're every day in working in this industry. And it was just fascinating to me. And so I pursued a secondary degree in cultural anthropology because I wanted to study fashion's impact on the world. My specific area of study was in Buenos Aires, Argentina, focusing on how fashion impacted their economy there. Here I am again in this moment, feeling unfulfilled in my career, learning all of this new information and wondering how am I going to combine all the things that I feel passionate about, the problems that I see, and do something about it. And so as I'm on this journey of reading all these books and doing all this soul searching and really diving deeper into my faith, I ended up going to a women's conference called the If Gathering, if you're familiar. And one of the sponsors of If Gathering was Noonday Collection. And I didn't know much about them. I just walked up to the table because they had some pretty jewelry and accessories, checked it out, grabbed a pamphlet, went back and sat down at my table. And I start reading the pamphlet about what they do. And if you're not familiar, Noonday Collection is a jewelry and accessories brand that provides dignified jobs to women around the world to get them out of vulnerable situations, to help them create generational wealth, to put their kids through school. And it was like a light bulb moment went off. Like, I can work in this industry that I love so much, but make such a greater impact in equipping women around the world, in providing clean water, in not filling our landfills. Like, there was just so much impact beyond what I was used to that I could take part in. And so from that moment on, my senior year looked a lot like pivoting my fashion career to focus on how I could make a greater impact through the work that I was doing. And it felt a little scary because the quote unquote ethical fashion industry that we know today was brand spanking new. Okay, this was 2014. So if you're not familiar, the Rana Plaza collapse had just happened. And the Rana Plaza collapse is a factory in Southeast Asia that collapsed, killing thousands and thousands of garment workers who were employed by companies that we shop at every day, Gap, Old Navy, H&M, etc. And it really made the world pay attention to the unethical conditions that garment workers around the world were put in, how they were unfairly paid, how they weren't given sick leave, how the buildings that they were working in were literally falling in on top of them. And it also shone a light on how environmentally the industry was impacting these regions all around Southeast Asia and India. At that time, there was a movement of fashion brands who were created to solve these problems. And so it was a very small industry at the time, nothing compared to, the fashion industry at large that I was used to working in. And so when the big decision in my life happened to start my own business, I knew that I wanted to do so in a way that would make a greater impact. And so my senior year of college, I had been interning with a sustainable and ethical fashion brand. I was also contributing to an ethical fashion blog, and I was also contributing to Navica, which is National Geographic's ethical and sustainable fashion platform. I'm not sure if it is still online today, but I'd already started all of this freelance work. And so when it came time to start my business, I felt like I had this very unique opportunity where all of these ethical fashion businesses were brand new. They were smaller, some of them were nonprofits, and they didn't have the budgets to hire full-time marketing teams or agencies. And so I was able to position myself as, hey, I have a very unique take on the fashion industry, having studied cultural anthropology, having worked in the industry for the last 7+ years, and I can come in and serve you as your marketing partner without having to pay an entire marketing team. And so when I first started my business, it was this amazing synchrony of, this is what I want to do, this is what I feel called to do, and there's this unique opportunity for me to do it in the industry right now. And so that pivot that I made just felt like it was all coming together. It felt like leaving the industry that I knew in New York, even though it was so scary, I now had this opportunity to make an impact that I would not have had if I stayed in the industry at that time. That sounds all well and good, right? Here we are. I did it. I figured out what my purpose was. Well, if you know anything about entrepreneurship, that's not the end of the story. There are so many ups and downs in owning a business, and so many things that you learn that might leave you to another pivot. So let's talk about that. About 5 years into owning my business, it was about a little bit before 2020. I think it was the summer before 2020. I had been running my business for about 5 years now, and I was running as a full service marketing agency studio. I had a few part-time staff. I had a few interns, and I was offering anything and everything under the sun marketing wise. And to be completely honest, I was extremely burnt out. I felt like being so heavily involved in every single client's business was just spreading myself too thin. I was saying yes to too much. I wasn't charging enough. I wasn't valuing my time and my work like I should have been. And I came to this point in time where I had to choose. Do I want to continue my business? Do I want to continue on this path where I feel burnt out, not having the excitement and the fulfillment that I had before? Or do I leave my business behind? And while there were those two options, there was actually a third option that I'm extremely grateful to have found, and that is design. So when I talk about the reasons that I got into the fashion industry in the first place, the biggest reason is creativity. For me, I've always been amazed by what people can create out of nothing, right? Whether it's photo shoots or illustrations or marketing campaigns, whatever it is, I've always been fascinated by that. And when I was in high school, I took a class that was a communication design class, right? So we were designing magazine covers, we were designing posters, billboards, and there was something in me in that moment that just felt like I love doing this so much. I love the design aspect, but I'm not an artist. I don't know how to draw. I'm not an illustrator. This isn't the right path for me. And I want to encourage you that if you have ever found yourself in love with a form of artistry, but there's a small voice in your head telling you that you are not an artist, that you are not a creator, I really want you to read The Artist's Way. I've been reading it in a mastermind that I'm currently in. And I had this realization the other day that there have been so many points in my life where I could have called myself an artist, but something either internally or externally was discouraging me from seeing that as my identity. And so for a very long time, while I loved design and I would have loved to design magazine layouts and editorial covers, I told myself that I wasn't an artist. However, in the work that I was doing every day, I was constantly designing emails, newsletters, marketing campaigns. I was really flexing that artist muscle in a way that I didn't even recognize was artistry. I didn't even recognize was leaning into being a designer. And so when 2019, 2020 came around and I found myself completely burnt out, not loving the work that I was doing, instead of turning away from my business, I asked myself, what do I actually enjoy doing? Like, what parts of my business am I actually in love with? And what parts of my business feel like I can actually make an impact by doing them? And the answer that I really fell into was strategy-backed design. And if you don't know what that is, because I have a marketing background, I am aware of the research and the positioning required to make a brand successful. I am also aware that that research allows you to stand out when applied correctly. So if we can gather that research, gather that brand strategy, gather that positioning, and then turn that into visuals that draw people in immediately, there's something very special there, something that leads to success. And so although I was a completely self-taught designer, I had learned the skill of design through my experience in marketing. And my experience in marketing had informed the strategic approach to design that allows our clients to be so successful. And so it was those unique experiences, those unique pivots that really informed that moment of making another big pivot and stepping into an identity of designer that I had put off for so long. And so since 2020, I have been designing brands, beauty brands, fashion brands, lifestyle brands all over the world, and allowing these women to step into their callings and make such a meaningful impact through the products that they're creating. Products that are not just products, right? They're meaningful movements in order to spark change, to problem solve, to help women feel seen, heard, and loved. If I didn't learn to step into these scary moments, to pivot when I felt like I had come to the end of a season, and to step into identities that I had put off in the past, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I really want to encourage you that when you feel like you have come to a crossroads in your life where you need to make a decision to continue to go straight where you are, or to make a turn, make a pivot in your life and try something new, or to step into a calling that you feel like you have had for a long time, those are some of the moments that you will look back on, no pun intended, as the most pivotal moments of your life, because changing your course will put you on the course that you are called to be on. So all that to say, if I hadn't said yes to the pivots in my life and my career that I have said yes to, I wouldn't be here today getting to speak to you, getting to share my experience, and getting to share the experiences of other women who have stepped into their bold yeses to their calling and made an impact on the people around them and on the world. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of If I Hadn't Said Yes. If this episode inspired, encouraged, or moved you in any way, your rating and review would be greatly appreciated. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone in your life that you want to encourage to go for their big yes. Feel free to share it with a friend. You can keep up with all of our content at If I Hadn't Said Yes Pod on Instagram. We'll see you next week.